Why, yes, I believe we shall.
Oh, I got a live one here.
Live from Little Rock, it's Shane Plays Radio, Geek Talk Radio, a journey into things we love. Sorry for that stutter right then. I had my headphones turned down, so I'm like, am I broadcasting? But yeah, so we are live from Little Rock. Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love. I'm Shane Stacks, your host. Thanks for joining us, whether you're listening live. And we've been telling people this, but I'll remind everybody, due to football, Washita football schedule, we're temporarily on 99.5 Faith Talk till mid-November. We're normally on 96.5 FM, The Answer, at this time, but temporarily for about 6 weeks, we are live on 99.5 at 1 o'clock on Saturdays. So if you're like, what the heck? What the heck is Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio? It's a temporary thing, but I hope you enjoy the show. And, you're more than welcome to, keep listening and join us back on The Answer when we swap back over there. And then if you're listening pre-recorded, we rebroadcast the show temporarily on our normal home station of 96.5 FM at 5 o'clock on Sundays following Hannity. So, which I'm not complaining about. That's a pretty good show to follow audience-wise. Now, if you're also listening pre-recorded, I just want to remind you that we do go out as a podcast a couple days after the live show on the blog at shaneplays.com, on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and more. Other fine podcast directories. And we're also carried on Krypton Radio. KryptonRadio.com is SciFi for your Wi-Fi. And we play a week delayed on Saturdays and Mondays on Krypton Radio. So we're a live this is talk radio. It's like political talk radio. It's like religious talk radio. It's like sports talk radio, but it's geek talk radio. I don't know of any other show like it. And thanks so much for coming along for the ride. Now, this is live talk radio. So if anybody wants to call in during the live show, if it's Saturday and you happen to be listening over the air, it's 501-823-0965. That's 501-823-0965. And you can also tweet me at Shane Plays, ShanePlays. Now, I have a very special guest that I'm going to introduce here in a moment. And the music that you heard that you don't normally hear at the beginning of the show should be kind of a clue of who you're going to be hearing from today. I'm super excited to be talking to this guy. His resume is very impressive. So much of the stuff he's worked on has been an important part of my geek life. First, I want to say I'm privileged to have a special guest in the studio today. My son's birthday party was today. His actual birthday is tomorrow, but my mom and my stepdad Troy came up from Burleson, Texas, and they're in the studio. And I think Mom wants to say, Mom, you want to say hi to everybody?
Yes, I'd like to say hi there, everyone, from our big Texas hearts.
Big Texas hearts. I love you anyway, even though you're in Texas. I still love you. Thanks for coming down.
I love you too.
Yeah, and they took us out to a nice dinner last night and got us gifts and spoiled us and definitely spoiled justice. So I'm so glad to have you here today. Now, the guest I have today, and I'll read the full bio here in a second, is Alan Howarth. Alan, am I saying that correctly?
That's right, Howarth. Like, how much are you worth at the bank?
Okay, so Alan Howarth, when I read his bio, you're going to fall out of whatever chair you're sitting in, and I hope you don't wreck your car, and if you happen to be listening while you're driving, because this guy's got an amazing bio. First, I want to throw out a couple of quick news items. One show sponsor, Troll Lord Games, has a new Kickstarter out, and it's the Adventurer's Backpack, which is basically like Castles and Crusades versions of Unearthed Arcana. If you're an old school D&D player, when Unearthed Arcana first came out, that was a big deal. It added a lot of new cool stuff to the game. And that's the same thing this Adventurer's Backpack does for Castles and Crusades. So go check that out. The link is on shaneplays.com. I forgot to mention earlier, the show notes are up right now at shaneplays.com, ShanePlays.com. I always put show notes out. So you can go get information on my news items and on my guest and whatever. So if you're like, hey, we're talking about it, or I want to know more, go to shaneplays.com and check that out. The other thing I want to mention briefly is we have the podcast extras up. A couple of weeks ago, I had Russ Morrissey from EN World on talking about his new role-playing game, Wine, What's Old is New. And I have another portion of that interview that didn't air on the radio that I've pushed out purely as a podcast extra on the history of World and the ENnies, which are basically the Oscars of role-playing games. And then also what his views on the current state of the tabletop role-playing game are. So go check that out. That's linked on the show notes at shaneplays.com. All right, with no further ado, I'm going to read my guest bio. So here we go. This is really impressive. Howarth's collaborations with John Carpenter include, and I got this off Wikipedia, so if anything's wrong here, we can correct that, Alan. But it says include Escape from New York, Halloween 2, Halloween 3, Halloween 4, Halloween 5, and Halloween 6. And I want to note that the music we heard at the beginning of the show before my main intro was from Halloween 2. Christine, Big Trouble in Little China, Prince of Darkness, and They Live. And then your award-winning sound designs have appeared in Star Trek 1, Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock, Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home, Star Trek 5, The Final Frontier, and Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country. I'm not even done yet, folks. Raiders of the Lost Ark, Poltergeist, Back to the Future 2, Back to the Future Part 3, The Little Mermaid, and Total Recall. And get this, his team received Academy Awards for Best Sound Effects for The Hunt for Red October and Bram Stoker's Dracula, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. Wow. Did I leave anything out, Alan?
Oh, there's more, but it doesn't matter. You got the highlights.
Okay, that is very impressive. You've definitely been in the trenches working on some cool stuff. And I've got a lot of questions for you about your movie industry stuff, but am I correct in understanding you're also now working with Magic Leap?
That's correct. Everything to know about Magic Leap, there's a magicleap.com website, but it's the adventure of what's being called mixed reality.
Yeah, Magic Leap, if people aren't aware, they need to go check it out. It's like if you took all the really super cool, imaginative people in the world and put them in the same room and said, change how we interact with the world. There's some big, you got Neil Stephenson involved, who's, major creative writer, done some really unique, cool work. I know Graham Devine, I think that's how you say his name, is involved from gaming. I mean, there's some really big names. Now, what can you talk about what capacity you're involved in with Magic Leap?
Well, I am an audio generalist, which means if it makes noise, I have something to do with it.
Okay. So how much of your time, one of the things I want to get to, is what you are doing these days. So how much of your time is involved with Magic Leap?
Well, I'm a full-time employee, so that's my job right now. It's actually it's only the second time in life I've had a real job. Otherwise, I've been an independent person out there going show to show, project to project. So it's a bit of a change for me. There's a structure that I've never been in before.
Right.
The only other time I had a job was I was the chief audio officer at Electronic Arts. So at that point, I was in charge of all the sound for Electronic Arts in 2002, 2003. Right around PlayStation 2 was already in place, and PlayStation 3 was an idea. So I've been tracking the stuff, and I'm an artist. So originally, I was a painter, sculptor kid. I was going to be an artist. Music was a hobby. And then at some point in high school, I played in a band, and they paid me one night, and I went, "Whoa, there's money!"
Yeah, there's money in this.
Music.
Yeah,
instead of starving artist. So I went off, and I was in rock and roll. My bands received regional success. We were the opening act for the Who and for the Cream. It was 1971-ish. Then I went out on the road with a jazz band called Weather Report, very famous band. Fusion jazz, traveled the world with those guys, and then eventually my first movie gig was Star Trek.
Okay, so I've got a few questions, that I want to ask, but my main, before I do that, I read your bio. Is there anything else that you want to tell us about, your background or yourself or your resume that you want to make sure that you get out there before we kind of go into talking about, what you've done with the question?
Well, talking about what am I doing lately? I have this other project that started as a hobby again, a research thing. It was all based on the mathematical backbone of the Great Pyramid. And it was a book called The Rods of Amun-Ra by a fellow named Wesley Bateman. And he spent 25 years analyzing the pyramid as an architect. And his idea was that whoever designed the pyramid, there had to be plans, right?
Yeah.
And so the units of measure that architect used, he felt was from a higher place. I mean, it's obviously an anomaly in time and space, et cetera, that there must have been advanced knowledge. So his idea was that rather than having the base of the pyramid be 436.2 whatever feet, it was probably made 400 units. What were the units of measure? Mm-hmm. Well, that book goes through all kinds of stuff. The boil down is it reflects two numbers in geometry we used to call irrational numbers, pi, which is pi r squared, and phi or phi, which is the golden mean. Mm-hmm. Well, in the case of the golden mean, you saw that in the Da Vinci Code and stuff like that. If you look at your own hand right now, and you look at the tip of your first finger where your nail is, and call that 1 unit long, the next part of your finger is 1.618 times longer.
Okay.
It's 5 times longer. If you do it again, it's phi again, the next part of your finger. The designers of us, whatever word you want to use for that, mm-hmm. use this mathematical constant to create life. Well, the interesting part is that particular ratio in the world of music and acoustics turns into frequencies. Mm-hmm. So the frequency, if you were to use it in musical terms, of the note A that correlates to the ratio of phi is 432 cycles. The standard is 440. The pi ratios, which were also part of the mathematics of the pyramid, the note A for the most average pi frequency is 424. And I have this whole evangelism now of spreading the word out to the musical world that the music you write, the communication of the music you write can be intensified by retuning the instruments to either pi or phi frequencies. And I call this project Natural Resonance. There's a website that's emerging, naturalresonance.net, still under construction. And I'm also going to make apps where you can retune the stuff that's in your iPhone and tune it to either your aura, your whole body, 432, or your chakras. So you could optimize. So as an artist, if I want to write a love song, I want to tune it to the heart. If I want to write something for contemplation or religion or universal knowledge, it should be to the crown chakra. If I want to dance, I want to do it to the root chakra. So there's a whole world of musical tunings that I'm exploring now in my own personal project I'm very excited about.
Well, I definitely, that sounds like a fascinating thing to pursue. I definitely believe that, and I separate my personal beliefs from my geek show, but other areas of my life, I'll go into this fairly in depth. I obviously, or not obviously, I firmly believe in design and intelligent design. Mm-hmm. And I also believe that music is powerful on a spiritual level. So I'm not surprised at all that you're finding mathematical proof of that. So, and that's it's super cool. I mean, music is powerful in ways that, it's really it's beyond just the vibration of the eardrum, and,
absolutely.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not going into a theological discussion, but, even the Bible over and over talks about, the importance of music and stuff like that. So many traditions, from history will highlight the importance of music. And then the pyramids, I've heard many theories about the mathematical importance of the pyramids. So, I'm not surprised. It's really fascinating when people research and find that kind of thing. Now, when you said the golden mean, is that the same as the golden ratio, or is that different?
Yeah.
Same. Okay, yeah. I hear the golden ratio basically pops up everywhere. Like it's almost impossible to get away from. So it's like the DNA of math or something.
Right, and then there's a layer that goes off this called sacred geometry.
Yeah.
Which is the way they call them the Platonic Solids. Like if you have a sphere, there's only I think 5 or 6 symmetric geometries that will fit in the sphere. Where if you created like a tetrahedron, which is a 3-sided pyramid, or a square does the thing. A thing called a duodecahedron has 12 sides out of pentagons. All that stuff also comes into the same area. So the math of creation, there is math in creation. Now, did the creator use the math, or did the creator just create it and we find the math embedded in it? Chicken and egg thing doesn't matter, but it's there.
Well, like I said, I don't have proof of this, I personally believe that that the math was there, and then it was used to build. But there's no, I don't have any. That's subjective, based on my own beliefs and stuff like that.
Yeah. How you get there doesn't matter. The answer is it is.
Yeah, it's there.
And so that's very fascinating. Yeah. And as an artist, as a musician, and great painters had the golden mean included in their stuff. If you look at the perfect face, when you see beauty, when you see someone that's very attractive, the golden mean or phi ratios of their face are all correct. So the distance between their eyes, the distance between their nose and their chin, the distance from their eyes to the top of their head are all correct in the phi ratio, and we see that as beauty. So aesthetics, beauty is nested in this whole idea of mathematical correctness. So it's way exciting.
I've also heard, and then I'm going to take us to a break, and then when we come back, I want to get into your movie composing and your sound design. But I've also heard mathematically that like what's considered more beautiful faces have symmetry, like the symmetry of the face is better, right? That sort of thing. Yeah.
And those phi ratios are part of that symmetry.
Right. Okay, cool. All right. Well, Alan, I'm going to take us to a break. When we come back, we'll talk more about your sound design and your composing. Folks, I'm talking with Alan Howarth, who has worked with John Carpenter on a ton of his movies. He's done sound design on like Star Trek 1 through 6, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Back to the Future movies, so much exciting stuff. And we're going to talk about that when we come back from the break here on Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love. Comic book lovers, visit thewildstars.com today. From the mind of author and comic book industry expert Michael Tierney, it's not just a comic book, it's a comic book novel. The Wild Stars is sci-fi and so much more. Learn the explanations behind UFOs and space gods. This isn't the Twilight Zone. This is the region of the Milky Way galaxy known as the Wild Stars. We guarantee you've never read anything like it. The complete comic book novel took 20 years to tell, with one reviewer noting, the story of the Wild Stars stretches ambitiously across space and time, from small-town murders to the destruction of planets, with every event given multiple layers of meaning. If you haven't read The Wild Stars, you're missing out. Visit thewildstars.com today.
Megawars.net. The classic online space strategy game has returned, bigger and better than ever before. Scout the universe and claim your empire. Construct, customize, and launch dozens of different starships. Battle thousands of opponents online in a team-based competition leading to the ultimate Battle of the Galaxies. Grab your slot today for the only online game where tactics and strategy still reign supreme. Visit Megawars.net and get options only available in our special pre-sales previews running now. Megawars.net.
The die is cast.
Plunge into worlds of fantastic adventure where dragons lie and the undead stalk the shades of your mind's imagines. Where creatures of legend plunder wealth through the horror of their passage. Monsters grim and foul hold the ecstasy of gold and the renown of glory. All this and more awaits you and your friends in the unlimited, fantastic world of the Castles and Crusades role-playing game from Trollord Games. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy today. A rules-light, adaptable game that has stood the test of time. 12 years in constant publication with no new additions. Castles and Crusades is the original, easy-to-play attribute check system. Join us and unleash your imagination. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy of Castles and Crusades today. Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/Shane Plays. Hey, welcome back to Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio. I'm your host, Shane Stacks. Again, as a reminder, if you're hearing this on 99.5 live on Saturday, we're on a temporary station change. We're normally on our sister station, 96.5 FM, The Answer, but due to football schedule, till about mid-November, we're on Faith Talk. So if you're hearing this like, what the heck? It's a temporary thing, but we hope you enjoy the show and come along for the ride. Speaking of coming along for the ride, what you just heard coming back from break was a clip of my guest, Alan Howarth's composition for the movie Christine that he worked on with John Carpenter, which I've always loved. And then we played, before the break, we played his version of the Halloween theme from Halloween 2. Now, John Carpenter evidently originally composed the Halloween theme, incredibly well-known, famous theme from pop culture because of these movies. But, Alan definitely, if you compare the original Halloween to what Alan did with it, he definitely put his own signature style on it. And I love them both. So, Alan, I'm going to, just in case people are just now joining us, he's done the composition on a ton of John Carpenter movies and other movies. He's done sound design on a lot of Star Trek movies, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Back to the Future movies, Little Mermaid, Total Recall. He's been on teams that have won Academy Awards for sound design. So, Alan, again, thanks for being on the show. I was really glad that we ran into each other at SpaCon in Hot Springs. And when I saw what hey, you had all your stuff laid out on the table that you'd worked on. And I mean, I was like, well, you've got to be kidding me. So really, really glad to be talking with you. I did want to ask, this is probably my main question, and I think I know what the answer is, but I'd like to hear your answer. What is the difference between composing and sound design?
Well, in every movie soundtrack, there are three categories of sound: dialogue, which is people talking; music, which is the underscore; and sound effects, which is the sounds of the world that we're watching that goes with the movie. Now to split it a little bit farther down, for me, there's very little difference between music and sound design because I approached sound design as a music composer. So I became a sound composer, hence the word sound designer. So like for Star Trek, my job was to create warp drives and transporters and phasers, things that didn't exist in reality, but it needed a sound to go with the image. So much like a company like Industrial Light and Magic made special visual effects, I was making special sound effects. Well, eventually the job matures into being sort of the overview and dealing with a filmmaker and the entire soundtrack. I'm working on a movie right now where I'm the composer and the sound designer and the entire post-production job. Well, that just needs more time because there's only one person doing it.
Now, can you share what that movie is at this point?
That movie is called Hoax, the movie, Hoax, and it's a Bigfoot movie.
Ah.
A horror movie where we go find Bigfoot. It's really well written. A new film director, writer, fellow Matt Allen out of Colorado, Littleton, Colorado, and he just reached out to me on Facebook. I agreed to read the script. When I read the script, it was so well written that I said to Matt, "If you make the movie that's in this script, this is amazing. I'll do it." So I sort of jumped in to help him out. And I'm a little more senior now. I've been at this 30 plus years. For you to read that resume, it took a long way to do all that stuff. Well,
and you were hanging out with The Who and going on world tours with a famous, I think you said, jazz band before that. So, So I was in the, back to the budding folks that are interested in sound. The first thing you come in contact when you're in high school is your band, right? You and buddies have a band, and you're in the garage, and that grows into making songs and playing events, whatever that is, clubs or parties, et cetera, and you launch into the band business. Well, the problem with the band business is if you make your record, if you don't get a hit, the band breaks up because everybody hates each other. Right.
It's your fault we didn't do it. And then you just wind up with a bunch of equipment. You wind up with a PA and a lighting system, et cetera. And all that's now modulated into the fact that you basically, in the band business, you pay to play. It's
right.
ridiculous.
Yeah, I had friends. I was roommates with guys that were in basically a cover band, but they recorded some stuff too, and I saw a lot of that side of it. And it wasn't.
Yeah, so it has a dynamic. So when I was with the jazz band Weather Report, I went into equipment. I was actually the keyboard technician. So the keyboard player was a fellow named Joe Zaunol, and he had like 9 dinosaur synthesizers that we had to keep running on the road, 1976 to 80. And it was studio equipment, so it needed constant repair. So I actually became a technician, and I was like the butler. I set it all up every day.
Right.
When it was ready to go, I'd say, okay, Joe, you can play now. And then when I got in the movie business, that was the first time everything I knew as a guy who was in bands and everything I knew as a guy that played equipment and was around choreography, I could take that knowledge base and use it for something else. So it was the same gear you would use in the band business, but now I'm making sound effects, and there's a real client, Star Trek. Mm-hmm. You're part of a real project that's going to be successful. It's not on me to be successful. Star Trek was already successful. Mm-hmm. So I started providing sound services, and that was when movies were just in mono, just going to stereo. Well, now movies have gone from mono to stereo to surround sound to 9.1 and beyond. There's a thing called Dolby Atmos where there's
I've heard of Atmos. 50, I don't know a lot about
50
it.
50 speakers in the theater, and it's a sound immersion. And I rode that whole path, so I fully understand it. I even met with Ray Dolby and showed him a system I had that was very similar in 2001. That eventually, I've been on a pioneering mission. So back to the difference between music and sound design. I know I digress. So
no, it's a good digression. It's fascinating.
And so in the world, in the 3 categories, the composer is the composer. I have a great quote from John Carpenter. One time he said, "Alan, music is the director's velvet glove," which means you touch people emotionally with the music, and the music soundtrack is telling the story musically. Mm-hmm. So if you were to take one of these soundtracks that I did on a CD, I put them in the order in which they appear in the movie. So it's like watching the movie only in music. And after you've seen the movie, you kind of, in your own mind's eye, recall, bits and pieces from the movie based on what the music says where we are in the movie. Mm-hmm. And when you think about it, music itself is sort of the soundtrack of your life. When you hear an old tune, it stimulates the idea, oh, yeah, I remember that song. That's when my girlfriend first got together and we went to this, whatever, Right. And it becomes like a timeline of your memory. So it's very important to us in our lives. So that's
definitely.
What music does. Whereas sound effects is utility in that if a car goes by, it's the sound of a car. If we're out in the forest, we hear the crickets. But now, as a sound designer, the choice of car bys and the choice of crickets and the choice of door closes. If it's simply, there's a silly door in this room, but we can communicate emotion with which door we close. If we close the door gently, we're sneaking around. If we close the door with just a normal thing, everything's normal. If we slam the door, we're pissed off.
Right.
Well, this reflects back to the characters and telling the story that the movie's telling, because movies themselves are amazing media. It involves pretty much all the disciplines. It's the one thing where you take everything. You take writing, you take visuals, you take sound, you take story. People perform all kinds of stuff in front of the camera, and then you encapsulate that into something that you can deliver to somebody else in a condensed way, with carefully scripted to be exactly what you want to say to them. Versus right now we're live, it's real time. There's pauses, there's there's whatever. This is all crafted.
People would be shocked how much tighter these conversations will sound if you go through and edit out just the ums. It makes a huge difference in the energy of the conversation. So I mean, I agree. I mean, sound is vitally important to movies, and for me personally, I want a better sound experience than a visual. Like I really don't care if I'm watching a movie at Ultra 4K and and all that. The sound immerses me more. That's not to say. Yeah,
crappy sound will bug you more than crappy visual.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. In fact, one of the worst movie experiences I ever had was the sound was too low. And it just wasn't enjoyable. So.
Yeah, and also you can't a lot of this is a big thing going from movies to DVDs. A movie was made to be played at 85 decibels in a theater in a big room, and now you're playing it on your TV across a 2-inch speaker.
Right.
And that mix just doesn't cut it.
Right.
It has everything. All the dynamics have to be shrunk and manipulated.
Right.
So back to the music, dialogue, and sound effects. So those three elements become the mix of a movie. Budget-wise, the sound job, we'll call it, is about 10% of the budget of the whole movie. So for the director, he spent $900,000 on getting his image up there, and he spends $100,000 on his sound. But at the end, it's 50-50.
Right.
You're watching and listening. And if you ever try to watch a movie with the sound off versus don't watch the movie and just listen to the soundtrack, you'll get a whole lot more information out of the soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
You'll know exactly what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, the old quote unquote silent movies they would play music. You know, they would have like pre-recorded music that would go along with them. Yeah,
and in fact, I'm playing tonight. I'm actually in Texas. You talked about your other relatives in Texas. I'm in Tyler, Texas today, playing at the Big Sandy Music Hall tonight. And I do concerts now where I run video clips of the movies I've scored, and I play the soundtrack to the movies like the old silent movies. So but I play it live. So
that sounds cool.
The old days.
What is
it's really fun.
Oh, go ahead.
Good.
I was going to say, what is when you do that? What do you think the most requested or anticipated, I guess, soundtrack portion that people like you to play?
All the stuff I did with John Carpenter is iconic. So everybody wants the Halloweens and the Escape from New York and Christine. It's funny. There was an article that somebody put on my Facebook. The 35 best horror movie soundtracks of all time. This means you're up against everybody, and 2 of them that I did are in that top 35, Christine and what was the other one? Oh, Halloween 3.
Oh, Halloween 3, which ironically was a diversion, was a story-wise had nothing to do with the other ones, but you know, it had the Halloween 3 name on it. That actually, I was going to ask you a question because of Halloween 3. The Silver Shamrock commercial that's in there, that dun 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 dun, did you compose that for the movie?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yeah. The producer of the movie, Deborah Hill, was John Carpenter's partner.
Okay.
Called me up and says, Alan, we're going to need this commercial to put on the TV in the movie. You're going to have to make it. I want you to use the melody from London Bridges Falling Down because I don't want to have any copyright issues.
Right.
So that was the directive. So now you think of 3 more days to Halloween.
Yeah, Halloween.
Yeah. That's what it is. But then the director, Tommy Lee Wallace, and myself sat in the studio. Tommy is the voice on that commercial. And we made a silly, stupid Halloween commercial. Well, it works.
Yeah.
In some ways, it was made to be irritating, and it is irritating, but it's cute, but it's funny, but it's weird. And so it survived beyond the movie as
totally,
like a novelty.
Oh, well, I was born in 1972. And my generation, anybody that watched that movie when it first came on HBO or whatever, I don't even know, that commercial sticks with you. That little white flash and put your masks on and all that. So it was a classic moment. So, okay. So, back to, I guess, kind of talking about some of the John Carpenter stuff. Obviously, the Halloween theme that dun, 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 is incredibly well known beyond just the movie. People who don't even know about the movies really know that music is Halloween music, right? You'll hear it at haunted houses and all that stuff.
It's fun. And it's funny when I go over people's houses and the kids are there. They have to show me that they can play the Halloween theme. It used to be that kids would go up to the piano and play chopsticks.
Now it's the Halloween theme. Yeah.
Now they play the Halloween theme. It's very simple. I got to give Carpenter credit in that as a musician artist, I would have thought it's too simple to work. But as a filmmaker artist, he understands simplicity, which is something that we all need to revisit in a world that gets more complicated. Well, I was having lunch with Brian Eno. You probably know who he is. Mm-hmm. Famous composer in his own right. And we're talking about modern, what happens in the studio lady. And he said what he does when he produces a band is he restricts the technology that they're going to use. Mm-hmm. So he says, we're going to use live drums, we're going to use only real guitars, or we're going to all do it in this particular thing. Because he says there's so many choices out there that you just get lost in a million choices. So I get more out of the band to tell them they can only use so much and get what you got out of that particular group, which is exactly what happened in the old days before we had all this stuff.
Well, right, because you had to use what you had, So
you had to use what you had.
Yeah.
So anybody out there says, well, I don't really have the gear to do this, wrong.
All right.
Make it out of whatever you got in front of you, and that's actually a good creative format for being creative.
So, I'm going to ask you a question about the Halloween theme, and then we got to cut to another break and pay the bills. But okay, so John Carpenter, you shared with me that even the stuff that you didn't compose, like a lot of times John Carpenter composed it at your studio. So obviously, you guys had a strong relationship. Now, when you did the duties on Halloween 2, and it's like basically, okay, John Carpenter's like, I composed this originally, but you're doing Halloween 2. If you compare Halloween 1 theme to Halloween 2, there's definitely a more distinct sort of, I don't know if electronic / synthesizer feel is the right term for it or not, but it's still very recognizable, but it's a different, I guess, set of instruments or something doing it. What did you feel nervous? I mean, at the time, had that theme already become sort of iconic? Did you feel like, I don't know if I want to mess with this? Or, I mean, I feel like that electronic influence was your influence, is what I'm feeling like. But I could be wrong.
Well, the process was John Carpenter thought he was done at Halloween 1.
Yeah,
but it became so famous that the producers wanted to make more. They made a deal; they were going to make Halloween 2. We were just finishing Escape from New York, which was my first score with John Carpenter, and sort of casually on the sidebar, he says, "Look, my next movie is The Thing. I'm going to be busy with that, and they're going to do a sequel on Halloween. You're going to do Halloween." It was like a classroom assignment.
Right.
You're going to do Halloween. And okay, cool. So the process was that we wanted to obviously use his already famous score.
Right.
That was done on a 16-track 2-inch. So I transferred the 16-track 2-inch to a 24-track 2-inch. So I had new tracks, and I basically overdubbed over his original Halloween score with my new performances on my synthesizers to give it sort of that gothic, darker feel.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my sound design coming back to music.
Okay.
Right, knowing the right sounds to select from a palette of whatever I had at the time, and adding that to it and taking it in a direction that was consistent with Halloween, but making it darker, and it was going to be more horror-ish feel. So that was successful action. Everybody liked that.
So when the movie came out, did you have anybody like, you shouldn't have, so the reception was pretty good? Like, they liked what you did?
Yeah, no, everybody loved the music because it was already the right themes and more on top of it. And John Carpenter wasn't there. He was busy doing the thing. So I was sitting in the studio by myself with his tapes, doing my thing on top of it.
That's cool. Well, that's it. We could do a whole show probably just, talking about what you did with John Carpenter, but I imagine based on his body of work that he's a pretty interesting guy to work with. So are you guys go ahead?
He's a lovely person. He's a real guy. He's real.
Yeah.
He arrived some real challenges at the end of releasing The Thing, which was one of the greatest monster movies of all time. It was considered a flop.
Yeah.
Because at the same time as The Thing came out with E.T.,
right,
and it was at the same studio, Universal, so everybody's attention went to Spielberg's E.T. and kind of lost interest in John Carpenter, and it was like, wait a minute, I did it, and nobody likes it. What the hell?
Yeah,
It was very difficult period for him.
Right.
So he's gone through real guy stuff, and then the same thing happened again with Big Trouble in Little China. Another great movie that
is one of the best. Well, they're both two of the best movies ever made, but wow. Yeah.
And theatrically it was considered a flop, and that was a victim of studio politics.
Well, let me tell you.
So the marketing group that was there just before the release all got fired, and the new guys came in, and the new guys couldn't let the old guys' campaign be successful, so they put it out for 2 weeks and pulled it.
Yeah, it's amazing movie.
Again, it just made him completely frustrated with the Hollywood studio system.
Yeah.
So the movies after that, he always did independently, and the rules were, you're not going to mess with me.
Right.
I'm going to do it. Leave me alone.
Right. Well, he's for Big Trouble in Little China to be considered a flop just blows my mind. But anyway, we're gonna cut to a break, and then when we come back, we got a few more questions. We're actually, only gonna have about 5 minutes when we come back. Radio time goes so quick, but we'll be back with more of Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio, a journey into things we love with Alan Howarth right after this.
And now it's time to give a little love to one of our sponsors. Some Goblins are your friends. Game Goblins is Central Arkansas's premier retailer of Magic the Gathering, Warhammer 40K, board games, card games, RPGs, miniatures, and hobby accessories. Call Game Goblins at 501-224-GAME or visit them online at gamegoblins.com. That's 501-224-GAME or gamegoblins.com. Conveniently located at 1121 South Bowman, right on the corner of Bowman and Canis in West Little Rock, and staffed by friendly employees, Game Goblins has expanded their store size, and there's plenty of room for exciting inventory and tables for play space. You'll like that space because Game Goblins has gaming events every day of the week. For all of your gaming needs, I heartily recommend Game Goblins. Make sure to check out their customer loyalty program that rewards you based on your actual purchases. Game Goblins earns your business and keeps it. First-time customers, mention Shane Plays and receive $10 off your purchase of $50 or more. Call Game Goblins at 501-224-GAME or visit them online at gamegoblins.com. That's 501-224-GAME or gamegoblins.com. Tell them Shane Plays sent you. Comic book lovers, visit thewildstars.com today. From the mind of author and comic book industry expert Michael Tierney, it's not just a comic book, it's a comic book novel. The Wild Stars is sci-fi and so much more. Learn the explanations behind UFOs and space gods. This isn't the Twilight Zone. This is the region of the Milky Way galaxy known as the Wild Stars. We guarantee you've never read anything like it. The complete comic book novel took 20 years to tell, with one reviewer noting, the story of the Wild Stars stretches ambitiously across space and time, from small-town murders to the destruction of planets, with every event given multiple layers of meaning. If you haven't read The Wild Stars, you're missing out. Visit thewildstars.com today.
Megawars.net. The classic online space strategy game has returned, bigger and better than ever before. Scout the universe and claim your empire. Construct, customize, and launch dozens of different starships. Battle thousands of opponents online in a team-based competition leading to the ultimate Battle of the Galaxies. Grab your slot today for the only online game where tactics and strategy still reign supreme. Visit megawars.net and get options only available in our special pre-sales previews running now. Megawars.net.
The die is cast. Plunge into worlds of fantastic adventure where dragons lie and the undead stalk the shades of your mind's imagines. Where creatures of legend plunder wealth through the horror of their passage. Monsters grim and foul hold the ecstasy of gold and the renown of glory. All this and more awaits you and your friends in the unlimited, fantastic world of the Castles and Crusades role-playing game from Trollord Games. Visit your friendly local game store or trollord.com to get your copy today. A rules-light, adaptable game that has stood the test of time. 12 years in constant publication with no new additions, Castles and Crusades is the original, easy-to-play attribute check system. Join us and unleash your imagination. Visit your friendly local game store or trollord.com to get your copy of Castles and Crusades today. Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays.
Hey, welcome back to Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio, a journey and things we love. Just as a reminder, we're temporarily on 99.5 on Saturdays at 1 during football season, and we'll be back on our main station of 96.5 FM on Saturdays at 1 in mid-November. Now, that music you just heard was from the Big Trouble in Little China soundtrack, which we just happened to be talking about right before the break. I'm joined by Alan Howarth, who collaborated as the composer on multiple John Carpenter movies and has been involved in sound design on major movies like Star Trek, Raiders of the Lost Ark, a couple of the Back to the Futures, Hunt for Red October, just big stuff. But yeah, it was ironic. Alan already had that lined up to play coming back from second break, and we just happened to be talking about Big Trouble in Little China right before the break. So, and one of the things I like about that clip is it shows the range of what you can do, right? Because like Christine has a kind of a drumming, forceful, I don't know how it's like the Halloween theme and the Christine theme and all that are great, but Big Trouble in Little China shows a much wider range of composition, I guess, if that makes sense. So I wanted. Yeah,
it makes total sense because the movie, the scope of the movie had action, adventure, comedy, suspense, horror. So therefore, that the movie drove what music was composed, and then also that particular score, the technical world of MIDI had just arrived.
Mm-hmm.
MIDI stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface. For all our geek friends, they know what that is. But in prior to that, you had to play each synthesizer one at a time and record it on on another track. Now all of a sudden you could play one synthesizer and have all 9 of them play at the same time off of one keyboard. So the electronic music production depth of sonic layers expanded rapidly on that one score. So I'd say Big Trouble, of the scores that I've done with John Carpenter, that's the best one that has the most stuff, and
right.
It really goes through a lot of different stuff.
Right.
It was fun.
Well, I'll tell you, we've got roughly 2 minutes left here. I just wanted to personally tell you, how you mentioned iconic earlier. Your style of music for the movies is, I went and, I haven't watched Stranger Things yet, but I listened to the theme. They should basically be paying you for that because it sounds like something you and John Carpenter would have done. I mean, you guys have been, there's been a revival. Yeah. Or back to, you just don't know. I mean, when we were doing it, we were just kids. Yeah. In my studio doing stuff, and it was me and John Carpenter. Traditional film scoring was more orchestral and classical, but here we are, the kids doing like rock and roll and analog synthesizers. Well, now filmmakers of today are recognizing that as a particular style. Absolutely. Yeah. No, absolutely. Now applies to the movies they're making today. It's effective. Anytime I hear music in that style, it instantly transports me to my young adult teenage years in the 80s, and it's always a warm fuzzy feeling that I love very much. Go ahead. Just as a quick note, here we are 35 years later or so. You could have never imagined when we were doing it that we'd be on this radio show talking about it 35 years later. Exactly. You just don't know. Which speaks to the power of it, Yeah, so we've got literally less than a minute left. Do you have a personal movie that you're the most proud of having worked on? Well, like I said, Big Trouble on the music side, and The Hunt for Red October as a sound design, and all the Star Treks. Well, I love Hunt for Red October. It's one of my favorite movies. I've always thought of it as Star Trek underwater. It feels like a Star Trek movie to me. It is. Yeah, but yeah. I love it very much. Listen, Alan, I got to draw the show to a close. We always run out of time. When I have a guest like you, I really feel the hour limitation. I really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on, and I hope that Magic Leap and your naturalresonance.net and the other stuff you're doing in your life just continues to be fruitful for you. Excellent. Thanks. Glad to share with you today. Yeah. Have a happy Halloween. It's Halloween weekend. All right. Thank you. Have a good concert tonight.
I shot him 6 times. What? I shot him 6 times. I shot him in the heart. Can't have gotten very far. Come on. I shot him 6 times. Yeah. This guy, this man, he's not human.
Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays.